What's going on? Welcome to Foot Guns. We're recording this on Tuesday, June 18th. It's just me, Wasabi. I'm joined today by someone I've been wanting to talk to for a while by the name of domahhh, who is, as far as I can tell, the biggest single account on Polymarket, which, if you don't know what Polymarket is the largest crypto prediction market, or I think it's the largest prediction market with real money, period, where you just deposit some USDC on Polymarket, and then you can go short or long any number of different events. Obviously, US elections, world elections, Iran presidential, will swine flu become a pandemic, basically any kind of market you can think of. So just to give an idea, your profile on Polymarket, which is called Revenge Tour 19B4, looks like you're holding almost 1.4 million in open positions and have done almost 700K in profit on the account. And ever since I've been looking at the site, I've seen your name, consistently at the top of the rankings. So really looking forward to chatting and learning about how you approach these trades.
Yeah, how's it going, man?
So I've been trying to get you on for a while, and I sent you some stuff that I wanted to talk about. But I think we got to just throw that all out the window right now because there's an emerging Trump meme coin situation that I think we need to talk about first. So I guess last night there was a tweet from Pirate Wire, which is like a crypto adjacent or Trump adjacent newsletter, saying that Barron is launching a Trump coin, giving the contract address. And right now, the odds, there's a market on Polymarket that goes by, is the Trump coin real? Is DJT real? That's trading at 24% chance it is real. And that it would be verified by Friday, so a few days from now. And the coin is now listed on the MEXC exchange. It was just listed this morning. It's trading up, but let's just go through it. Like, what you're in this market. It looks like you're currently betting no. What's your current thought process on this market?
I mean, first of all, this is a great prediction market. This is like exactly what prediction market should do, which is take an issue that people are kind of debating. Is this true? Is this not true? They're trying to piece together, all the clues, trying to figure it out and price it. And so, I've spent the past, I don't know, 16 hours ever since. I saw the tweet 2 minutes after it came out, and my instant reaction was that it was a joke because you had Barron Trump, like, how old is he? 17 or 18? I think he just graduated high school. He's launching some Solana shitcoin. Like, I'm not sure that this is quite accurate. So, my first instinct was to just dismiss this as a total joke. And then you had Martin Shkreli getting involved, like, oh, it's legit, it's legit. And then you had some Trump adjacent like influencers step in, like, oh, it's legit, it's legit. So this market that you just cited, I think it's traded between, when it first launched, I think it was about 5 cents. Like, people were very skeptical. 5 cents equals to 5%. So it's a 0 to 100 scale. So 5 cents would be like, okay, this is not real, right? And over the course of the past, however long it's been up, 12 hours, I think it's traded up to 95 cents at one point. So 95% chance. So it's been very, very back and forth in terms of, like, some people are absolutely sure that this is real and some people are absolutely positive that it's fake.
Yeah, and so you can. One thing about Polymarket is you can look and see everyone's position at any time. So it looks like you're holding a no position right now. Is that your absolute view right now? Or are you using that as a hedge and going long the coin? And if it goes to zero, then it hedges against this coin that could have a much bigger upside.
Yeah, no hedging. And I'm not totally certain. If I was totally certain, I'd probably dump, like, $200,000 into this. But, so I have around 25,000 invested into it right now. So I'm pretty certain that it's not true. But, when it comes to Trump, like, you can't be you can't be too certain of anything, because it's like, oftentimes the most ridiculous thing possible is the next thing that Trump did. Because it's like, I don't know, 6, 9 months ago, maybe a year ago, when he was launching the NFTs, my initial reaction was, no, he's not launching NFTs. And then it takes until you see the Trump tweet that it's like, okay, yeah, I'm launching NFTs, for you to actually believe that this is a real thing.
So is this something that is that basically the insight that you're trading on? Or are you kind of trying to piece together, following each little tidbit that comes out on Twitter? Like, there's like the Martin Shkreli thing. There's, people who are looking at the top holders. I think at one point there was a whale that held just, double-digit percentage of the supply. I'm not sure if that's still true or not, but
I think the biggest evidence against it is that I think this contract was created like a couple months ago, and the initial funding was from a Chinese exchange called KuCoin. I think that's like kind of the biggest evidence against it, that the derivation of this whole thing kind of is a little bit sketchy. It doesn't seem, on the level.
yeah. So the thing, okay, I agree with you on that. The one piece that led me to reconsider that was that I'm also a subscriber to Pirate Wires. They have a daily email, and so there was a theory that was saying that obviously like this could have been just a hack, like this guy's Twitter could have been hacked and putting out just a pump and dump coin. But in this email newsletter that I got this morning, there was absolutely zero mention of, hey, our account was hacked, or any mention at all of the coin. So that leads me to believe that tend for me to put a higher chance on it. So I don't know, or how do you sort of like evaluate that piece of evidence?
Yeah, I mean, that's what's weird about the whole thing is because, it came from, I think his name is Mike Solana, and he's tied to the Founders Fund. I mean, Founders Fund is legit,
Yeah.
and it's also a very strange thing to report that Trump is launching a Solana coin and that Barron is involved. If you take out the joke element of it, this is a very oblique thing to make up. So you kind of have to take it a little bit seriously. You can't be totally dismissive of it because the sources seems pretty decent and the information is like hard to invent totally. So there could be, some shades of truth to it. Maybe Trump was thinking about it. Maybe, there was a miscommunication at some point. So it's kind of, it's, I'm definitely not certain either way that it's real or that it's not real. And that's going back to what I was saying earlier, that this is like perfect for a market because you're trying to figure out, as everyone else is trying to figure it out, is this legit or not?
Okay. All right. Let me just ask you one more question about this, because the way I framed it as like the possible hedge, where right now, like say, what is the coin at, like 100 million or something like that, right? If it's a real Trump coin, this thing is going to pump to a billion plus, right? So that's like, massive upside. And if on the poly market, the most you can win is going from 25% to 100%, right? So like, would it make sense for a lot of people to just buy the coin with the higher upside and then short the market as a way to sort of like hedge the risk, give them more time to dump the coin if it turns out to be fake, or offset that loss a little bit, given that with Polymarket, the upside is capped and with the coin, it's uncapped? Like, do you think that could be like definitively changing the number in the prediction market?
That's possible, although, I kind of know what I'm doing. So I can look at the various holders of these shares and I see that a lot of new accounts hold yes, and then a lot of older accounts are very skeptical and they hold no. So I think what you're saying could be a smart strategy, but I don't think anyone is doing that. And plus, a lot of people that are in this space aren't super interested in hedging. They're more interested in getting leverage and doubling down and things like that.
All right, cool. So why don't we just like back up a little bit and get into your backstory? Obviously, you're a non, so however much you feel comfortable with, but like, can you talk about a little bit of your trading background and how you got into Polymarket? Is that, I think from when we were chatting earlier, you said you're doing this 16 hours a day, and basically like this is all you're doing now. So how did you get from where you were before to doing this 16 hours a day?
Yeah, so I've been doing this a while. So when I first graduated from college, I had like a normal job. And this was back when like online poker was first getting started. So like the late 2000s. And so I was playing online poker on the side and I was doing really well at that. And then I quit my job and I just did online poker. And then I transitioned from being a poker player to prediction markets, which were first getting started. Right. So this was like Obama versus McCain type stuff. And then I've been doing prediction markets pretty much ever since. There was a few year period where there weren't really any American prediction markets. And so I was doing stock trading. But other than that, I've just pretty much doing trading of some kind since pretty quickly after college.
Okay, so and is Polymarket where you're trading on predominantly, or is that just one of many places that you're trading?
Yeah, Polymarket is just, I mean, it's by far the biggest prediction market that's ever existed. It dwarfs, anything that has ever existed. Like it's gonna 20x. I was just writing a tweet. This site called Predict It, um, in the US was very popular in 2016 and 2020. I mean, Polymarket is going to be 20 times larger than Predict It was in 2024. So, I mean, you're talking about 16 hours a day. Yeah, there's so many markets, there's so much volume. It just takes an enormous amount of time. And plus, I love doing it, you know? So, I'm the biggest liquidity provider. So, pretty much any market that you click on in the site, I probably have offers in it, and I probably have at least a slight opinion on it. So that's why I tend to do a ton of volume, and I have to spend a lot of time doing it.
So is that your main strategy? Would you say your main strategy is doing the LP and getting the rewards from that, or is it just doing that with a kind of like slight directional bias on the markets? Like how much of your alpha is coming from the LP versus like the takes on the markets themselves?
Exactly. Yeah, it's a little bit of both. I would say, and in fact, I look at my profit percentages broken down, and it's about 50-50, and it's been about 50-50 for like over a year now. So half of my profits are coming from rewards from providing a ton of liquidity, and then half are coming from trading profits.
Okay. And what does that tell you about Polymarket? I mean, the other thing we can get into is like the difference between Polymarket and some of these other markets, right? Or like if you go to Vegas or Sportsbook where you can bet on some of these things, right? Like Polymarket has no trading fees right now. So like how big is that in terms of like the amount of trades you can be profitable and like the liquidity that's there?
I mean, yeah, that's just huge because there's no friction to making a trade. Like there's no reason not to make a trade if you think something is a good value. If you go to a site that has fees and it's like, do I want to pay $10 to maybe lose this bet? But, on Polymarket there are no fees at all. So that's frictionless. It's
And in
great for
fact,
betting.
there's like anti fees, right? Because you're getting paid for providing liquidity.
Right, right. So if you put offers on the book, on the order book near the midpoint, you'll get paid for that. Yeah.
I don't know. Maybe this is a rephrasing of what I just asked you, but like, how much would you say that does the fact that Polymarket is so liquid and deep mean there's just like less of a directional edge to be had, and that the markets are just really really efficient, or would you say that there's still a lot of juice left to squeeze, or how do you think about like the range of different markets and what are more where is there more inefficiency?
Right. So I would say, the basic answer is that there's probably over 1,000 markets on Polymarket right now. And I would say, the odds on all of them are probably roughly correct, plus or minus 10%. But I would guess all of them are probably wrong if you're like an expert, right? So if you're an expert on so and so topic, like who's going to win the state of New Mexico or whatever, because you live in New Mexico and you know everyone, and it's like, you can probably come on the site and be like, okay, the odds are a little bit wrong, right? So me, that's not an expert in this field, may see the odds as roughly correct, but someone who's like an expert can probably come in and make some profits off of it. So I would say that the markets are roughly correct, but not like they're. If you know what you're doing and you can be selective about what you're betting on, you can probably easily make some profits.
And do you have any areas like that where you feel particularly strong, or do you just kind of like your thing is just looking at them all?
I would say the one market that I'm very strong on, and it's one of the biggest markets right now, is who's Trump going to pick for his VP. I feel like I'm very 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 experienced in VP betting, because I've been doing it since 2008. So one of the stories that got me some attention was that I bet on Sarah Palin, who was McCain's like surprise pick, because we were tracking like flights that were coming in to where he was going to announce, and we saw a flight coming in from Alaska, and we were like, holy shit, he's going to pick Sarah Palin. And I think she was like 25-1 at the time. So I think this was like a huge win for me very early in my career, where I made like $25,000, and it's like, oh my god, I'm rich now. So yeah, I've been betting on VP for a very long time, and I kind of know like what goes into it, and like what people look for in a VP, and that's probably one market where I have like a strong advantage. But overall, I would say, I try and like pick and choose where I'm trying to make big bets. It's based on like research. It's like, okay, I can look at the odds, and then I do some research, and most of the time it's like, okay, these odds are probably correct. I don't need to make any big bets. But sometimes it's like, okay, these odds are really wrong, and let me figure out how I can get a ton of money on this.
Okay, let's talk about the VP nominee because I have some money in this market too, and I'll tell you just like my naive strategy, right? So like a few days ago, there was a New York Times podcast about like who are the front runners for Trump, and they said that it was between Burgum, JD Vance, and Marco Rubio. Right now, there's not, I guess, on the biggest Republican VP market on Polymarket, there's not a straight Burgum bet even that you can take. So there's just a other. And I think both of those were all three of those were in the teens, I believe, when that story came out. So my philosophy was like, okay, if it's really down to these three, why don't I just put on a basket of these three? So how do you see that as just like a naive trade, or how are you thinking about the market, if any, differently?
Yeah, so I would say you have to be very, very, very distrustful of any reporting. Not only for two reasons. Number one, the candidate is going to try and hide who he's going to pick as the VP. It's not going to be super obvious. And then number two, Trump is very mercurial. He changes his mind quite a lot. So even if we knew right now that someone was the definite front runner, and we're like a month out from when he's going to make the pick, like that could even if Trump knows who he's going to pick and everyone around him knows who he's going to pick, the fact that we're a month out gives Trump so much time to change his mind, and he changes his mind so often on things. So even if you knew for a fact that someone was the front runner, I still wouldn't trust that information even from Trump himself.
Yeah, I would say that the other part of my trade that I did was I bought those three and then I just set limit orders that were like, I don't know, 10 at a double basically. Like if this guy's at 10% and if it goes to 20%, yeah, I was kind of thinking that Trump was going to do like an apprentice thing. Oh, this week I like Marco, this week I like JD, and have those percentages pump that would just like that I would sell into.
Yeah, and I would say in 2016 when he picked Mike Pence came out of nowhere. Mike Pence, I think maybe a couple weeks beforehand was trading at like 25 to 1 odds. He was not really mentioned. Maybe he was mentioned as like a loose contender, and then he went from a loose contender to the favorite, in the blink of an eye. So you just have to be very careful on VP that you're not bonding things. In other words, paying high prices and getting a low rate of return on stuff, because unexpected things can and will happen, especially in the VP betting.
So how do you think? So right now on this poly market, again, it's like a bit unique because right now there's the other, and that's leading at 29%. So that's some. I think the other prediction, what is it like? Maybe other markets are like 20 or 25% for Bergam. So this other category is encompassing that plus any other rando he could pick. So would you say that that's like undervalued now, or how do you think about the valuation of that particular market right now?
I mean, I think if the market was extremely wrongly priced, I would probably make big bets and kind of correct it. So I think it's roughly correct right now. Doug Burgum is probably the favorite right now. Um, he kind of has like a Mike Pence vibe where he can kind of fade into the background, and that's probably what Trump is looking for, someone that's totally innocuous, someone that can fade into the background. Trump has a very like Queen of Hearts personality where nobody can upstage him, so he's not going to pick somebody high profile. So for most voters,
Yep.
they probably will not have heard of Trump's VP pick ahead of time, right? Like, oh, who is this person? I've never heard of this person in my life. That would be Trump's ideal VP. Someone that fades into the background, someone that voters are like, okay, yeah, this person's fine, and then they move on with their life. So Doug Burgum kind of fits that Trump mold of who we would want as the VP. So I think the odds do make sense with the current reporting and the current feeling on who Trump is going to pick and what he values in a VP.
Yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense. The thing that made me index a bit more on Burgum was also just the Rex Tillerson pick for Trump's what was it, Secretary of State. Like he does, and Burgum is like a businessman who's, I guess, was he a billionaire or made a lot of money in business. So he has kind of like a Rex Tillerson vibe, like the executive that Trump seems to like.
Yeah, I think there's a certain camaraderie there between two successful, well, we'll put successful in quotes for Trump, but two successful businessmen. Yeah.
All right. While we're on politics, just before we were recording, you were writing a tweet about the general election, so Trump versus Biden, kind of like calling out Democrats for having copium, basically like saying the polls are off, or we're gonna, put a high weighting on Biden's incumbency and the Trump conviction and everything as like being these sleeper factors for Biden in the general election. So you're kind of like throwing cold water on that. Like, how do you is this something that you just think about in terms of politics in general, or is this something that you're also expressing in the markets?
Yeah, I'm trying to be. I'm not trying to take a big position on the presidential market right now, just because it's so far away and so many things are going to happen between now and then, and it's hard to have a lot of opinions when things are going to change so much over the course of a few months. So I'm not trying to take a big position right now, but yeah, the tweet was about how Democrats or people that are normally leaning into intellectual takes on the presidential race are kind of upending that this year because they can't really handle the fact that Biden is the underdog, because they see Trump as a very unpopular politician, which he is, and they see Trump as now a convicted felon, which he is, but they're not quite coalescing that with the fact that voters don't seem to care that much that Trump is unpopular. They care more about the fact that Biden is less popular than Trump is. And they're also much more skeptical about Biden's age. And Biden's age is also plays into his vibrancy. Like if you watch a 2-minute clip of Trump and a 2-minute clip of Biden, and you asked like some person that didn't know who they were, like, oh, what age are these people? You know, someone would probably say, oh, Trump looks like he's 72. And then they would say of Biden, oh, he looks like he's 95 years old. So they're very, very, very different in terms of like how vibrant they are. And I think that's reflected by voters, because voters are like, I don't want this person that's going to, mope around and look lost in public as my president. So there's number one, Biden's like not super popular. Number two, voters are super skeptical of Biden's age. And I think that Democrats are kind of not taking these criticisms of Biden super seriously and kind of focusing on Trump and being like, wait, why aren't you focusing on how unpopular Trump is? And it's like voters take that, but they view Biden as less, you know, less popular and less desirable as a president. And so you have these polls coming out that are showing that Trump is gonna. I think he's winning by like blowout margins in Nevada and Arizona, and possibly, he's doing well in Georgia. And these were states that Biden won last time, right? So you have Trump like kind of flipping the script. And whereas in 2020 and 2016, you kind of had these Republicans being like, oh, we don't care about the polls showing Hillary up, Trump's going to do well. Republicans were kind of rejecting polls, right? And now you have the script has been flipped, and Democrats see themselves losing, and they're like, oh, well, the polls are wrong, right? And it's kind of interesting because I feel like a lot of the intellectual people on Twitter are left leaning. And so you have these people that are normally like they lean into data and they weigh heavily towards, taking a very intellectual approach to things, kind of rejecting reality a little bit. And it's a bit disconcerting too, because it's like you can see people are super influenced by their partisan takes, right? And that's something,
Yeah.
just taking a bird's eye view of it, that's something that's like not super great about this country, that people can have their opinions so heavily derived from the fact that they love Republicans or that they love Democrats.
Yeah, I mean, I've thought a lot about this too, and the thing that gets me is sort of like it seems like the Democrats have this inconsistency where on one hand they're saying that look, Trump's second term is going to be the fucking apocalypse, right? He's going to like take over the government, he's going to do all this anti-democratic stuff, he's going to put himself for a third term. It's going to be the end of the world. At the same time, given those stakes, we still can't push Biden out. We can't, like, why are not more prominent Democrats saying, like, okay, it's time to find someone else. It's time to do the convention power play? Is there this game theory where like if prominent Democrats start criticizing Biden, they know that, okay, that's going to make their side look bad and decrease the probability of him ultimately winning? They feel like they're trapped in this with this gun to their head, or like, what do you think that, or is it just like there's a lot of career risk if you're like a prominent Democratic strategist or Congress person or whatever, that you don't want to break with the party there? Or like, how is that, like, how are they not squaring that inconsistency?
Right. I mean, I think there's a rejection of the fact that, you know, Biden is not very popular and not a lot of voters, even still, it's June. The primaries are done. And even still, voters are like, can you please replace Biden as the Democratic nominee? Like, find anyone except this guy, And you have people like Nate Silver, right, who ran 538
Yep.
until last year. And he's posting on Twitter, like, oh, Biden's not super popular. Voters are kind of skeptical of it. And you read through the replies, and a lot of the Democrats are like, "Oh, so you support Trump now? Oh, why aren't you pointing out that Trump's a felon?" And it's like they're kind of whistling past the graveyard a little bit, to use an analogy. It's like you have to deal with the with the reality of the situation. Like, yes, there are many things that are wrong about Trump, but voters are super, super, super skeptical about Biden. And so you have Democrats not really dealing with that properly. They're trying to just ignore it. They're trying to push it. They're trying to push it by the side. And the thing about Biden's age, he's not going to get any younger. Like, there's no reversing this. Like, maybe you can give him some, drugs or something to where he can have a little pep in his step, but there's no reversing the age thing.
Yeah, yeah, and it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy, and the other side is exploiting it and doing clips. But then, like, once there's that impression there, yeah, I agree. It's very hard to reverse it, and physically impossible. So then, I mean, are you thinking that eventually, like say that, there? This is the cool thing about Polymarket too, is that they're that, bets on Biden dropping out. If he drops out after the debate, if he wins at all, right, which could encompass someone else being president on the Democratic side. So, like, do you think those markets are mispriced at all, given the situation and like the copium? Or I guess another way to put it would be like, how much of the price do you think is copium, and are these like Democrat wearing rose-colored glasses being reflected in the market, or do you think it's the opposite? Like the bettors are tending a bit more pro-Trump.
Well, I would say it's similar to the DJT discussion earlier. The Biden dropout market does a ton of volume right now because you have two different groups of people that have very different opinions. You have hardcore Democrats who think there's a 0% chance that Biden drops out. Like, he's the lock nominee. It's happening. This is a bond. I'm willing to pay whatever price is possible for Biden not to drop out. And then you have Republicans on the other side who are like, they see clips of Biden online, they watch Fox News, however they get their media, and they're like, this guy's a corpse. Like, obviously the Democrats are going to replace him. The Democrats aren't stupid. They're going to replace him with someone younger. Like, this makes total sense, right? So you have these two different groups of people that are pricing the exact same thing very different ways, because the Republicans see it, they're like, okay, it's probably 50-50 that they replace Biden, or maybe, like, some people probably think it's like 70 or 80% chance that they replace Biden. So when you have two huge groups of people with extremely different opinions, then you get a very high volume market that, like, the price is constantly fluctuating. So I think the Biden dropout market, it's been between 10 cents and 30 cents for months, because people, and it does tons of volume. I think there are people that have like hundreds of thousands of shares in it going both directions in this market, just because the views are so, diametrically opposed to one another.
Yeah, it looks like the top no holder is 710K.
Yeah, I mean, and so my view is like, this is like a 5 to 10% chance thing. It's very, very, very unlikely to happen, but there are a few things that could make it happen. Like, for instance, let's say Biden has a bad debate, and he doesn't even need to have a bad debate. Like, let's say 95% of the debate is good, but if he, like, 5%, like, he stumbles or he has some few really bad moments, like, the chorus of voices that are going to be like, we need to replace this guy, like, it's going to be just huge on the day after the debate. So this is a contract, I think it's at 25% right now that Biden will drop out. So if he has a bad debate or if he has a bad moment in the debate, like it could easily hit 50 cents the day after. Conversely, if he has a perfect debate, maybe it goes from 25 cents to like 5 or 10 cents, So there's a big event coming that's going to change the price of this massively. So that's why I'm kind of like, I personally don't think there's much of a chance that he's going to drop out, but I'm still keeping it at like a 5 to 10% odd scenario because events could change, the thinking on whether he should drop out or not.
And so you think, all right, so your current position is 53K on the no side, but at the same time, you think that there is a chance, right? There's some event where it could trigger a spike in this
Right.
market. So when you think about trading it, so this goes back to like you're being a full-time trader. So I assume like the night of the debate, you're going to be up there with your screen watching. And like, as soon as are you looking for the one gaffe that kind of, people are going to latch onto and is going to become like the Trump campaign clip the next day? Like, are you looking for that moment and then you would flip yes? Or are you just kind of saying like, this is my overall view. It's overall a no, and I'm not going to switch sides because I think right now it's undervalued. Like, are you looking for that like event getting
Yeah, I
trigger?
will be watching this like a hawk. I will try and, because debate stumbles like happen all the time. There was a famous one in 2016 with Marco Rubio. There was a very famous one in I think 2012 with Rick Perry, where he's just like he forgets the names of very basic stuff. So this stuff happens all the time, and debates can be unfairly punishing because people are just human beings. A normal person can forget something, in the course of 2 hours of talking. So even if Biden is at the top of his game, things can still go wrong. So, yes, I will be watching the debate with great intensity, and I'll probably be live betting, if something goes wrong, I'll put in a huge bet that he's going to drop out.
And would you look to then sell that because you think that, is this like, all right, you're going to sell this into people betting after you that he's going to drop out, or it's something that you think like, okay, this is it for him? Or I guess you'd have to just wait and see.
Right. I mean, yeah, that's the thing about prediction markets is you kind of just like play it by ear, so maybe I'll try and sell it right away. And maybe I'll be like, I think it depends on whether I legitimately think he's now going to drop out or whether I think that other people will simply have an increased opinion that he's going to drop out. So it's kind of like a game within a game, trying to figure out maybe what other people are doing or if I want to actually hold the position myself for the long term.
All right. Let me ask you one more thing about politics before we move on to just like your general frameworks. So there was a guy, I forget his name, but he had a series of blog posts, I think one or two general elections ago, where he was on Predict It, which is like the one of the centralized prediction markets that I guess is still around. But he basically did like a Nate Silver, where he made markets for each different state on election night and said, okay, like basically did a state by state portfolio of bets that on net, based on like, is this state undervalued or overvalued on this particular market compared to the polls and the margin of error? And he had a whole model just in the same way that the 538 model or whatever. Do you do that kind of thing, or do you just more think of and sort of like take a portfolio state by state approach, or are you just kind of like calling each individual market as you see it plus the liquidity side of things, or like do you take like this general model kind of view for the election night?
Well, I think in 2020 and so in previous years I've done that. I've had like a master spreadsheet and I've had very organized positions and I've tried to be hedged, and try and create like arbitrage opportunities even within, my own positions. Um, but I think there's just so much money involved now with Polymarket and there's so many markets that it would probably be very hard for me to do that. Like if I were going to do that this year, I'd probably have to hire someone to like write, write up what all my positions are. So I'll probably try and go into election night mostly neutral and then just trade it on the fly.
Yeah. I mean, Polymarket just released their election map, and like if you put it side by side with like the 538 map, it just seems like pretty on in general. Like I didn't see any glaring places where like different regions are being called different ways by the two models. Like it seems like in general, they follow each other pretty closely at this point.
Yeah, for sure. And just to circle back to that previous answer, like if you wanted, if someone wanted to do that, they could easily do that. They could easily create, a position and like um have shares in a bunch of states and like create like a map and like create a very sophisticated position, like using individual states and electoral votes and stuff like that. I'm just speaking for me personally, just because there's so much, I'm providing so much liquidity in so many markets that it would be it could quickly run out of control if I try and take a position and then I'm trying to unwind it if things are going wrong. If I have a big position and then things are going sideways on election night, yeah, that could quickly spiral out of control, and then I'm trying to unspool 50 position markets at once, and it becomes unfeasible to do as one person.
Yeah, and you're clicking buttons on the UI, right?
Yeah.
Are you using an API that you're doing this, or there is an API, right? So you could write a script to do it
Yes,
if you wanted,
yes,
right?
there is an API, and there are a lot of API traders. Although, for a prediction, you would probably want to focus your API on markets that don't move that much, because you know the benefit and the downside of a prediction market is that the odds can change very quickly. Like this DJT market we're trading about, like Trump could easily tweet, like while we're talking, he can easily tweet this coin is real, or he could tweet, or truth social, or he could truth social, this coin is fake, right? And then this market that has done millions of dollars in trades, and people are going back and forth, it goes to 0 or 100 in the blink of an eye. So there are tons of markets where you can API liquidity provide, and you're doing great because like the odds are not changing over time, but you just have to be careful when the odds can change in the blink of an eye.
Awesome. All right, so I want to, unless there are other like specific markets you want to get into now, I want to talk a little bit about just like your overall advice for someone who's doing this, right? Like it seems, like obviously you're the top account. Like who knows how many people are doing it anon, where there's, they're not putting their name on it, or they're splitting up their positions for smaller accounts. Or let me ask you that actually. Like, do you have like how do you feel about your account being the personality that everyone's kind of like looking at your positions? Do you have other accounts that you do anon, or do you feel that it gives you an edge to be someone where, to have people looking at your trades like that?
I mean, if you had asked me like 6 months ago, I would be very nervous about my positions like being so public and people are trying to copy it or trying to like force, like for instance, if they see that I own a lot of no, they can try and bring the price of yes up and kind of like force me to liquidate or something like that. So but now I'm kind of like, people don't really care that I'm own yes or own no. They have their own opinions. So I've kind of let go of the fact that all of my stuff is in public, because people don't really, they I mean, I'll get DMs that are like, oh, why do you own XYZ? And it's like, oh, I own it for this reason, or I own it by accident just because I'm providing liquidity. But that's probably the extent to which people care about my positions.
And then, so you don't think that there could be, like, I don't know if you trade like meme coins or whatever, but like there's the Ansem who's kind of like the main character, right? Where he'll like tweet about a meme coin and it'll go up, but he's kind of like the sort of
Right.
influencer. But you think in Polymarket that there's kind of a dampened influencer effect because people are just betting their own gut takes, and there's not really a lot of like mimetic following of like the big accounts.
Yeah, I don't think it's as like influencer driven as meme coins. I will say that if you're looking at a market and you see that like a very experienced account is on a certain side, like you should probably weight your opinions to that side. Like, oh, this person, that they're not just betting for fun. They probably see something or they know something. So I can be very skeptical if experienced traders are on the other side of my trades, because it's like, well, what are they seeing that I'm not seeing? Because I'm a smart person, but I'm not the smartest person in the world. I don't know everything. And there's tons of markets where I'm making a trade and the other person is getting the better of it, just because they have more information or whatever. And I think that also goes to kind of a question you were asking earlier about someone that's new to the site. and kind of how they can find their space. I would say, there's probably over 1,000 markets on Polymarket. So what I would do if I was brand new to the site is I would kind of just click on the site and I would go through the markets like one by one. And there's probably one or two or three or more where it's like, okay, I think I can research this. I think I can find an edge. And like you can easily find markets where the odds are wrong in a small direction, and they could even be wrong in a big direction. And then you can just keep doing that, market by market by market, and grow your account and grow your account, because that's how I started. I think my first bet um was like $10 on like what movie would win best picture of the year, right? And it's like now I'm making $200,000 trades as if it's nothing. So I mean, it's just a matter of snowballing your account and just finding like um small edges, and then just snowballing it up into like, then you can become like a master trader.
I want to ask you a little bit about mental models. I was going to ask you about books, and then I see on your Twitter, which we'll share, DOMAHHH. What is it? Three or four
Four H's,
H's?
yeah.
Four H's. You have a ton of books, so we'll link to that to give people an idea of what to read. But I want to ask you in particular about one mental model that I thought was really helpful. I had two successful bets earlier that was so on this account. Let's see, the markets were Hunter Biden conviction and will Elon's pay package be accepted? And both of those, I used a mental model of just, I don't know, you call it like the base rate. So it's like if you have a market where you know that, okay, in federal prosecutions, what is the rate of conviction? It's overwhelmingly convicted, right? Like it's like 90% plus. So if you see a market where you know the base rate is 90% plus and it's trading at 70% or 60% or 50%, it's basically a slam dunk just on the divergence from the base rate. And the same thing with the Elon pay package, right? Like you can easily look up the rate at which shareholder pay packages are rejected, and or any shareholder votes, the company loses, and it's like 90% plus two. And Elon was it trading at 50-50, or was trading at like 20-30% below that base rate. So like, is that something that you find is really helpful in looking for similar markets like that?
Yeah, I would say what I was thinking about as you were asking the question is that both of these markets like heavily tie into opinionated things, right? So it's like Hunter Biden, people have very strong opinions about it, and it's like a partisan issue. And Elon Musk kind of to the same degree. And I think, you can find people betting on those partisan opinions. So with Hunter Biden, I think he was trading at about 75% to be guilty, and I thought it was like 90%. So I owned a lot of yes. And I think people were betting on it because of the fact that, his father's the president, and they're thinking, well, maybe the president's going to rig it to where, he's going to find his son innocent or whatever. And then Elon Musk, it's like, okay, you can actually look and see like what the voting is so far, and kind of follow voter accounts and stuff, and it's like, okay, yeah, yes is probably going to win. But then you're betting against people are probably more interested in buying no, not because they're analyzing it from like some statistical perspective, or looking up past history of proxy votes. It's probably because they don't like Elon Musk, or they saw some headline where it's like, he wants to pay himself, whatever it was, $55 billion, and it's like, oh, this is ridiculous, it's not going to happen. So you're betting kind of with facts against people with opinions, right? So, and there are tons of markets like this, and sometimes the opinion people win, but like over time, if you're betting on like facts against people with opinions, like you're just going to take their money.
So do you have a mental picture of who you're betting against, right? Like you just need to kind of find a story that you can tell in your head about who is the sucker on the other side of this market that's making an emotional decision based on like an irrational hatred of Elon, or a view that the political system is rigged. Like you kind of look for that irrationality. Like, do you have any ways of finding that? Is it just looking at the New York Times and Twitter and seeing what people are debating about?
Yeah, so I would say, and I would just go back to when I was doing stock trading. So when I was doing stock trading, I would look at the most heavily shorted stocks, and I would go through the whole list, and I would try and find the reason why people are shorting the stock, right? So let's say it was GameStop for whatever reason. And it's like, okay, well, they're shorting it because they're losing money. People are buying games via the console or via Amazon. Like, there's a whole host of reasons. And it's like, okay, why are they wrong? And there are a couple of stocks where, because I went through a list of like 100, and you only need to find like one or two where it's like, okay, I understand why they're shorting it, and this is why they're wrong, and so I'm going to buy shares of this stock, and maybe there'll be a short squeeze or whatever it is. So applying that lesson from stock trading to trading on prediction markets, if you're gonna make a small bet, just for fun, it's like whatever, you don't need to understand why the other person is betting against you. But if you're gonna bet significant money, or you're trying to do it like for profit, like you need to figure out why because if you're buying something at 70 cents, right, they're buying it at 30 cents, so why is this person buying this at 30 cents? Like, you need to understand their point of view, and not only do you need to understand their point of view, but you also need to understand why they're wrong in their point of view. So a big thing on prediction markets is like trying to get into the head of the people on the other side of the trade, and it's like, let's dissect their reasoning, because making the case to yourself of why you like something is super easy, and there are a lot of biases, and it's like, if you think of something, you're going to overweight it. So it's very important to get into the head of the other side of the equation and kind of dissect that and figure out why they're right, or why they're wrong.
And do you find, what are the best places to find that? Like, do you look at just the chats under the initial market? Are you looking on Twitter? Are you looking at, there's the Polymarket Discord? Like, are there any like particular places where you find like to get inside the mind of the other side of the trade?
Yeah, so I mean, it's just a lot of searching, a lot of talking to people, seeing what the conversation is like, you know, researching it, and like research it from the perspective that you're trying to find the reason for the other side, right? And it can be hard to do that, right? And you know, sometimes it's the case that, you're betting on something at 70 cents, and the other person's betting it at 30 cents, and they're right, right? They have found something that you have not found, right? And that's like you have not done your due diligence, right? So you didn't search properly or something like that. So it can sometimes be like a very exhaustive search to figure out why the person is betting on the other side, especially if it's like an experienced person.
Cool. Are there any other mental models, like from your list of books or other stuff you recommend? Any things that you find yourself coming to over and over again? Just the like little tricks or tips that have stuck with you?
I would say a very important thing to do is kind of understand the basic biases that you encounter as a trader. And I would go to the book, I think it's Thinking Fast and Slow by Daniel
Hmm.
Kahneman. And I think people have criticized some of the studies, and I'm not sure it's entirely bought into still as like a great book to read. But in that book, there are the papers that he wrote with his partner, and I think they won a Nobel Prize. And he kind of goes through these biases that you encounter as a trader, and I think, I mean, as like a person in life, but that you can apply to trading. And it's like super important to go through these, because it's like you don't even realize, like, you had they're so unconscious, and they're like drilled into you like from a young age. So you have to kind of bring it to the forefront of your consciousness and be aware of these tricks that your mind is trying to play on you, for various trades and stuff like that.
Got it. One other just kind of like mechanical question that I think is interesting about Polymarket is that they're have this oracle which is run by the UMA protocol, which is basically like the arbiter of if markets are disputed. Have you ever found yourself having to get involved in that process, and like, so like under the hood, like the UMA token holders are voting to determine what happened? A lot of times there's sort of like ambiguous markets where it's not clear if it should resolve one way or the other, and it's a judgment call, or things that have been found out to have gone the wrong way after the fact. Like, do you have any kind of like comments on that process? Do you think it's decent enough for now, or ways that you would improve it?
I mean, this is a source of a lot of arguments among people that use Polymarket. Because the previous model of how they would do things is Polymarket would write the contracts, right? And they would, whatever it was, let's say the rules were like 8 sentences long, and the rules stayed the rules, and then it would go into the Yuma court, and then Yuma would kind of interpret it, right? And then it was sometimes like a crapshoot on whether on what Yuma would use to figure out what the answer is. Like let me use an example so I don't keep it oblique. There was a market a few years ago on whether Vladimir Zelensky would be the Time Person of the Year, right? And that was the headline. Will Vladimir Zelensky be the Time or Volodymyr? Will he be the Time Person of the Year, right? And then you went into the fine print rules, and it said that Zelensky had to be the Time Person of the Year by himself. Like it couldn't be him and Putin. It couldn't be him and other people, right? And then Time Magazine released this cover that was honoring Zelensky and the spirit of Ukraine, right? And on the cover was Zelensky prominently, and then also like thousands or hundreds or thousands, whatever it was, of Ukrainians, right? So it was kind of like honoring both Zelensky and also the people. So then this was a source of dispute because Zelensky is the person of the year, but he's not the person of the year solo, but is the spirit of the Ukraine a person? So this was a huge debate on UMA, and they ultimately resolved it to the title, which was, is he the person of the year? Yes, easy peasy, done, right? But this was after days and days of arguments, and the contract is, going from 20 cents to 80 cents to 20 cents to 80 cents because people are absolutely certain it's X or absolutely certain it's Y. So rules disputes can be quite disruptive to a prediction market, but um I will say that Polymarket has smoothed it out a bit, because what they do now is, instead of keeping it static, like they write the titles, they write the 8 sentences, but now if questions arise, they will provide clarifications on a lot of markets. Like, oh, when we wrote the market, this is what we meant. So if this happens, this is how we think that the market should expire, right? So they've provided far more clarity. So it's not thrown into this Yuma court where you're kind of taking your life into your hands and you have no idea how these people are going to vote on this money that you're wagering.
Yeah, I think there was another one that was interesting that I saw. Lexnode, who's like a crypto lawyer account, talking about there was the market on the ETF, Ethereum ETF approval, and the one market, there was obviously markets on this, and there were he was arguing that there are two kind of administrative steps that need to be taken for it to trade, and only one of them was taken, but the market resolved yes, but still technically it wasn't authorized to trade. So like, were you in that market? Do you have any view on that one?
I mean, you're asking me to step on a landmine basically, but I lost a lot of money on that market because I took the same exact view where both steps needed to be. Hold on one second. There's news. Oh, okay. Hold on one second. Sorry, I just need to I just need to do something real quick. Sorry, it's just the life of a trader. My wife is well used to it. We'll just be having a conversation, then I see news, and it's like everything comes to a halt.
Or if you want to share what news came in and how you reacted to it.
Oh, it was just pretty simple stuff that the court in New York is not going to immediately hear an appeal. So I just went to the market and I just pulled my orders, and later on I'll kind of dissect what it means. I just want to make sure that if news happens, like people aren't taking advantage of orders that I have on the book in reaction to it.
What do you do? Let me ask you this. Do you have like what's your stack for, like, okay, I'm in this market, then do you immediately set up a Google alert for it, or how do you get your real-time alerts for markets that you're in?
I mean, so if it's a high volume, like important market, like this DJT coin that we were talking about, I have alerts for that, and if stuff happens, like hopefully I will get the news within like 2 seconds. So It really, because there's so many markets, like I can't have alerts for everything, so I just try and kind of follow the news for 95% of markets, but for 5% of markets I try and be on top of things, and if stuff happens, I try and be notified right away, that way I can react quickly. And that's not only, I could potentially profit from that, but also it's self-preservation, that other people don't, exploit the liquidity that I have on the books, because I have so much liquidity in so many markets. And it happens, probably once or twice a day, that someone gets a couple $100 off of me because I have orders up and news happens, so stuff like that happens. And I just try to minimize it.
Got it. Okay, so back to the ETH ETF you were talking about. You
Yep.
lost money on it
Yep.
because you were taking the double sided
Yep.
was necessary for it.
Yeah, I mean, it's the biggest loss I've ever had. It was not super fun. Um, and they kind of took a very, very, very simplistic, you know, in poker we talk about levels, like what level are you on? 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. It's like, are you trying to bluff me or bluff, bluff, bluff? Anyway, so they took a very level zero approach to it, where it's like, okay, the SEC approved some element of it. We have headlines, done, game over. We're shutting this down. We're not even going to talk about this more sophisticated level of approval. But it's just kind of annoying, because it's like, it's theoretically possible that it never goes through this second level of approval. Like, it seems like it's going to happen. It seems like it's a 99 point maybe 5% thing. But like, if we're 6 months from now and something has happened and they never approve it, it's like, you know it's a little bit of bullshit that they expired it, that it was approved. So it can be very hard to argue the rules, especially after the fact. You can come across as like, a sore loser and someone with like sour grapes. So it's a little bit hard for me to talk about it too much, and plus I just kind of have to move on, because one thing about trading, both from like poker and like stocks and like prediction markets, is you can't get too hung up on wins or losses, or you will drive yourself crazy, or you will go on tilt, or your career will be over real quick, because you've gone on tilt in the wrong direction.
Yeah, and the way that the UMA voting is set up, right, is like you have to, if because I had a little bit of money in there, was kind of testing it out, where you have to vote. If you vote out of consensus, you get slashed, right? You lose your money. So you're voting, you're looking to see what the herd is going and trying to go that same way. And if you go outside of the herd, you will be penalized. So that does kind of suck if you're like the lone lawyer who really dove into the paperwork and understand that there's this technicality, right? Like there's not really a way that can be rewarded unless that one person manages to convince the whole herd in a very short period of time.
Yeah, I mean, it was such a high profile market that, sensibly, maybe they went for the simplest answer, right? And it can be very hard to argue for the more sophisticated answer, because it's like, especially in this UMA. So in this ETH ETF example, Polymarket clarified that this counted. So UMA was kind of cut out from the process. But if it did go to the UMA voting, and the UMA voting was decisive, to your point, they likely would have gone towards the simplest answer, because that would be the most likely to form a consensus on that. Yes, this was approved.
Any other just like big notable wins or losses, good stories that would be interesting to talk about?
I mean, the other big loss that's on the horizon, I lost to a guy named GCR that I think a lot of people know. He bet me a long time. I mean, we chat sometimes. I've known him since before he got into crypto. Um, and so we chatted, we chat sometimes, and he was absolutely positive that Trump would be the nominee again. And this was like, maybe a few weeks after January 6th. He was like, "Oh yeah, Trump's going to be the nominee again and probably president." And here I am like, "Oh no, this is not going to happen." So this culminated in a bet, a few months or maybe a year after January 6th, where I was like, "Yeah, Trump's not going to be the nominee." And he bet Trump was going to be the nominee, and he got great odds. I think I gave him like 42% odds. So he's going to take like 250,000 from me, which is not fun, but things like that happen, and move on.
And when do you settle that, at the convention?
At the convention, so there's still, he's not a spring chicken, so maybe maybe
Yeah,
make it
yeah,
happen
yeah.
in the
You're
next 2 weeks. Yeah, so it's like
getting out the actuarial tables.
yeah, I've 99% lost.
Well, any other just like final tips? I don't know, like if you were talking to someone who is like, maybe I should go full time on this, or maybe I should take some of my meme coin stack and put it on Polymarket. Like, what are the biggest tips? Anything we haven't covered so far?
I mean, I first of all, I would say number one, if I were a young person, I would have a job and then do it on the side, and then if I was doing something well on the side, I would quit my job and try and do that full time. I think definitely you should take risks when you're young, and like try and make a career out of this, because number one, I love my job. Number two, I've been very successful. And then number three, it's allowed me like a lot of like personal freedom that I wouldn't necessarily have. So that's like the basic answer to whether someone should try it. The answer is yes. Absolutely you should try it. Because worst case scenario, you lose a few $100 and it's like, okay, I'm not very good at that. You move on with your life. So I think number one, yes, they should absolutely try it. And then number two, prediction markets are fun, and there's a market on like everything. So even if you don't care who's going to be the next president, maybe you care about whether this DJT coin is real. Like maybe you care about like who's going to win the Euros. So there's tons of markets on tons of things. So even if the things we're talking about don't explicitly interest you, there's probably something else that interests you on a prediction market. So I would say overall, prediction markets are super fun and you should try it out.
Awesome. Well, Domer, let me drop your Twitter. You guys should all follow him. It's at DOMA4Hs. Thank you so much for coming on today. Hope we can chat again.
Yeah, all good. Thanks, man.
Cool. Thanks so much. Cheers.